And good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Land, Environment, Housing, Agriculture, Parks, and Infrastructure is called to order, and the time is 8:00 a.m. Today's date is May 13, 2025. Notice of this hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on May 6, 2025, with a second notice provided on May 11, 2025. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on Bill 49-38 COR, introduced by Tina Rose Muña Barnes and co-sponsored by me and Senators Joe S. and Agustin, William A. Parkinson, Chris M. Dueñas, Shawn Gumataotao, Vince Borja, Shelly, Calvo, Jesse Lujan. An act to transfer lot number 258, Municipality of PITI, to the Department of Parks and Recreation for the purpose of expanding the footprint and capacity of the VICENTE A. LIMTIACO Memorial Park. We will also hear testimony on legislation that I introduced, Bill number 79-38 COR, an act to authorize the MAGA'HÅGAN GUAHAN to sell a portion of Block 8 in New AGAT, designated as Block 8 Park Area, and to deposit the proceeds of the sale into the CHAMORRO Land Trust Infrastructure and Survey Fund. I would like to welcome my colleagues joining me here today. On my right is Senator Tina Rose Muña Barnes, and on my left is Senator Tello Taidugui. Thank you, Senators, for being here this morning. For those who would like to come up to testify on the first bill, please go ahead and come up to the stand, and I'll go ahead and give Senator Tina Rose Muña Barnes for her opening statement.
Manana Sitsuas, Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker, and to the listening audience. Thank you, Vice Speaker. I appreciate you working with my office to hear this bill 49-38, especially given the urgency of this issue and for the benefit of the committee and the public. In late January, we received a request from the Department of Parks and Recreation to see firsthand the state of the VICENTE A. LIMTIACO Memorial Park, commonly known as Tiguat Cemetery in Nimitz Hill. During the visit, the Department of Parks and Rec staff stressed the need to expand the park and showed my office that the department was fast approaching its full capacity given its current footprint. Colleagues and to the listening audience, the request from the Department of Parks and Recreation is simple. Transfer a lot directly adjacent to the cemetery into its inventory, a property that is already owned by the government but is not assigned to any agency, and a lot that has already been surveyed. That request is formalized, Mr. Chair, in Bill 49. Several weeks ago, the department had asked to schedule a hearing for this measure because its capacity concerns have reached a critical level. Once again, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing this urgent matter as soon as our schedules allowed. So while the bill before us is simple, I will note for the record that it is merely the first steps needed to help the Department of Parks and Recs. Its budget, as we all know, is bare bones, so there isn't any wiggle room to absorb additional costs or pay for any development to this new lot. The Department of Parks and Recreation will certainly need to clear and grade the lot, and infrastructure like walking paths or vehicle access certainly has a price tag as well. And with our partners here, I hope that they can share some of their strategic planning efforts to maximize this land, perhaps with spaces to hold urns as an option to save space. I do have some questions for later, but I also want to note, Mr. Chair, that the fiscal note for 49-38 COR has been submitted, and it too noted that the land management to transfer the above referenced lot in the Tiguat area, expanding the footprint and capacity of the Memorial Park, the issuance of the certificate of title for said lot number from Department of Land Management to DPR as owners in fee simple is administrative in nature, but Mr. Chair, they noted, but may incur administrative costs in the process. Additionally, any work on the said lot required by DPR to expand the municipal cemetery, like land clearing and excavating and/or construction, will incur additional costs. However, absent that information from DPR on what specific works will be required, a more detailed fiscal impact of this legislation cannot be determined at this time. I bring that up, Mr. Chair, because it has been noted by BBMR that there may be, and as noted in my opening statement, this is important as we look at providing the service to the community, especially the indigent community, and also for the record to cite 10 GCA on the health and safety for our community, Chapter 30, which talks about cemetery and the mortuary. There is a provision on Section 30108, the public cemetery, that authorizes the government to set aside public land within such an amount as may deem necessary for the establishment of a public cemetery, and that jurisdiction will then fall under Parks and Recs. I tell you that, Mr. Chair, because of the responsibility that the government is held to provide for the community of those within the, the indigent community. So, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know the mayor the good mayor has to leave real soon, so I'm hoping you could yield to him to share his remarks.
Thank you, Senator Martins. I'd just like to welcome my colleagues, Senator Therese Terlaje and Senator Chris Barnett, for joining us here this morning as well. We'll go ahead and start taking testimony. Mayor, President of the Mayor's Council as well, and Mayor of PITI, please, we'll go ahead and start with you, sir, this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Senators.
Good morning.
I do have written testimony that I'll submit, but because I do have a 9 a.m. OPA meeting, I will have to make this short. I want to respectfully oppose this bill for several reasons. One, I understand the need for burial plots, truly. But I also understand the need for dignified burial plots for our people. And if our intentions are to provide this space for our loved ones, then before we continue to give more property to the department, perhaps we need to fix up the cemetery first. And we need to maintain the cemetery in a manner that is dignified for our loved ones. And I say this because if you, in any given day, you go to Tiguex Cemetery, if you are happy with the way that cemetery looks, so be it, but I'm not. And the majority of my residents are not. And I'm not saying that it's one person's problem. The cemetery has looked like that for so many years. And if truly the government is concerned about our people, then you need to be concerned about that cemetery as well. And before you give, we're so good at building. The government is so good at producing big, lavish buildings, more property, more everything, but nothing to maintain those facilities, those buildings, and those properties. And that'll be the problem here. Because in this bill, we give property to DPR. But I haven't seen a plan. I haven't seen a grand plan for that expansion. What's the funding source? Are we just going to rely on this government? Because I can't. I can't simply just rely on the government to provide the funding source and to provide a grand plan for this expansion, when in fact the current state of that cemetery is deplorable. The route to Ladzon landfill looks way better than going into Tiguex Cemetery. The paved road to Ladzon is better than Tiguex Cemetery. And if you're truly concerned about our people, and that's the rhetoric here, then shame on us for caring for our people like that. for now, I want to say that if there is no better plan that exists currently to support the cemetery, the current cemetery, to maintain that cemetery to the best of their ability, which is much better than that, should be, because the director and the deputy director are fine gentlemen, then I'm not going to support anything that's going to give them more property, more money, if they can't currently manage within their means this cemetery as it exists today. If that changes, I am inclined to support any transfer of property or a transfer property for more burial plots. But again, for me, it's why are we doing this and what is our plan? Because we're going to give, and have no plan, and at the end we're going to wait for another legislature to come in to change the plans because there's no money and there's no plan for the current expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Sablan?
Manana Jesus, Angel Sablan, Director of Department of Parks and Recreation. And my good friend to my left, the President of the Mayor's Council of Guam. I don't disagree with his sentiments. But we all got to remember that that cemetery was there long before he was in power and long before I was even the Director of Parks and Recreation. And it's true. If you don't fund it, if you don't maintain it, you're going to get what you don't fund for. And so I just want to reiterate today that we hope to change his mind by coming up with some concrete plans to make that place a dignified place for our people. And I can assure the President and the rest of the people listening that we're trying at DPR to change things around of many years of neglect. And we can't do everything overnight, but we're certainly on that track. I want to also say that this shortage of space at VICENTE LIMTIACO Cemetery was not just overnight. We have brought this up before, even to the 37th Guam legislature. Unfortunately, no bill was ever produced to do an increase in the footprint of VICENTE LIMTIACO Cemetery. The bill before you today simply does that. It just increases the footprint. Because if you hear the testimony today from the person that's been in charge of handling the cemetery, we are down to less than maybe a month of burials left at Tiguac. And my other choice is, if we don't get additional property, is we close it to further burials. So this additional space doesn't require any appropriation, at least currently. All it does is it changes the survey marks of Tiguac. We just want an opportunity to be able to have a place that we can look forward to make the plans that President Alec is asking for. We don't want to go and invest something in a plan where we don't even have the authority to use that property. And so that's all that this bill does, is to give us the authority. It's not going to displace anyone. It's not going to change anything. Tiguac, as we call it today, will remain the same. All it does is increase the property. But moving forward, once we get the property authorized to DPR, then we can set things in motion to come back to this legislature, show you our plans, and ask you for the appropriation to do it. One of our other ideas is, instead of continuing to bury in the ground, because we know this is finite, again, in another 5 years we're going to come back and say we need more space, is to build crypts in that additional property that we may be given, so that there be more years that we can use the cemetery than what is currently at hand. And so with that, I just wanted to let you all know that Tiguex Cemetery, the lack of space has not just been brought front, and we thank Senator Tina for introducing this bill, but we have asked since the 37th Guam legislation, perhaps even the 36th, to come forward and look at expanding the cemetery or once and for all just closing it. And so I'll let the deputy and I'll let our acting parks administrator further testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sablan. Mayor Alec, if you need to excuse yourself for your OPA, you can go ahead and you're welcome. Deputy Director Warren Pelletier, you can go ahead and begin, sir.
Yeah, I was planning on, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for holding this hearing and to hear our cries of needing additional space and to help us hopefully get your support and approval to include the lot in question as to one with the Tiguex Cemetery. Since my appointment here at the Department of Parks and Recreation, this has been one of the thorns in my shoe about finding a location and or expanding the Tiguex Cemetery from its current footprint. We have made many adjustments over the past 3 years in moving things around, moving spaces around, moving the infant burial area to a nicer area so that we can increase the plots and the numbers of plots for the adult burials. But right now we are at a very critical point. I have reached out to Department of Land Management. We've met on many occasions. I've also reached out to Joseph Santos, and we have met a couple times. There seems to be a master plan that if implemented and funded, it will allow for another 50 years plus, and will give the dignity that Mayor Alec was asking for. We can't turn back time. What happened, transpired in the past decades was all before we started working at Parks and Recreation, but now we are reaching out to you and pleading with you for the inclusion of that lot into the current lot, and also minimum funding to create the roads and the pathways into there, the cascajo that is needed to be laid down in order so that when we do, and hopefully with your approval, obtain that lot, and it's included in the overall lot, can begin burials in that site. And we estimate 5+ years. Now, if we are able to add crypts with that, it can be 20, 25 years. I'd like to say in the past, a lot of the problems at Tiguex Cemetery is families not following the guidelines set forth in the structures of some of these crypts and burial slots. They plant trees, and now these trees are enormous in size, and it's difficult to trim them, get any equipment to them, and such. So those are some of our challenges financially and forth. But I will reach out to Joseph Santos at the request of Senator Tina Muña Barnes to see if we can obtain that master plan. I've seen it myself. It's a beautiful plan, and hopefully we can get a copy of that flash drive, and I could provide a copy for each one of you to view and observe and see. And again, getting back to Mayor Alec's concerns, he's opposed to continuing or allowing this to happen today, but it's with one condition, that the funding's there to make it more presentable for our people, okay? So that's my testimony. I thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. John Glenn Taidigui, please, sir, your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Barnes, Terlai, Senator Burnett, Senator Taidigui. My name is John Glenn Taidigui. I am an employee of the Department of Parks and Recreation, and as the acting Parks Administrator, I've been with the government of Guam for 33 years. I oversee the VICENTE LIMTIACO Cemetery with burial scheduling, assisting families with grave locations, and record keeping of deceased. If you're not aware and ask why DPR is in this cemetery business, let me explain. Public Law 15-96, signed and promulgated on April 4th, 1985 by Governor Ricardo J. Bordallo, which designates DPR the responsibility with administration, operations, and maintenance of all public cemeteries, whereas the Vicente LIMTIACO Cemetery, TIGWEC, is a public cemetery and is included in the Guam Territorial Park System inventory. The cemetery has been in existence since 1966, which I believe DPW was the agency at that time handling the burial schedules, and before it was turned over to DPR. And also DPR was handling the Guam Veterans Cemetery at one point before it was turned over to Guam Office of Veterans Affairs, GOVA. I am here in support of Bill number 49-38 COR and to emphasize the importance of the bill. Vicente LIMTIACO Cemetery, also known as TIGWEC, has met the maximum capacity with over 5,000 burials dating back from 1966 to present. In the past months, DPR has been finding extra space to conduct burials and has come to an end with no more space available. Bill 49-38 COR will allow DPR the ability to continue with daily burials for family members to lay their loved ones to the final resting place, and at least allowing DPR up to 5 years until a new cemetery property have been pursued. DPR is tremendously working with planning to either continue with ground burials or constructing crypts such as 2 layers up in height and 100 per row, back to back. But of course, funding will be the main issue again. Hoping that you all consider the DPR budget and allow for more funding to the solution. So in closing, I hope you will consider and support Bill number 49-38 COR. Sidus Masik.
Thank you, Mr. Tadigui. If we can ask Mr. Joe Borja to please come up. I see that you wanted to give oral testimony as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was here to answer any questions that you might have about the property itself. Land management has actually been working on this project for several years to actually survey the property and take it through land registration. But it was the drive, I guess, of this department and now this time that pushed this issue to the forefront. I understand they only have remaining space for about 40 or more burials. But even prior to this, because there was no master plan of the area, people were getting buried under the easements, some of the power line easements alongside of the road. During the survey, we found out that some of them were buried there. Yeah. So PITI has a distinction of having 2 cemeteries at least. The other cemetery, of course, is the Veteran Cemetery, which also, I believe, is approaching its capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borja. I'll go ahead and invite my colleagues to ask questions of the panel, and I'll limit their comments or questions to 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and ask the author of the bill to go ahead and lead with the questions and comment period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This question is for Director Angel. I'm glad you brought this up, but I'd like for you, just for the record, to reiterate that point for us today. Before you seek any funding to improve the TIGWEC Cemetery, you must have this adjacent lot in your inventory, correct?
That's correct, Senator. Okay,
so meaning it would not be the best use of time to develop a plan with your current footprint, because that plan would be irrelevant as soon as the footprint gets bigger through this land transfer, right?
That's correct, and I'll give you a prime example. The Harmon Sports Complex. It's a grand plan. What you see today is just not even 10% of that plan. But it's just laying there on the shelf, rolled up in the maps because there's no funding for it. But just like for the cemetery, we don't want to do plans and then we don't get anywhere. We want to make sure that we have the property to be able to expand.
And just for reiteration again, given the current capacity, you said 1 month earlier, how much longer can you operate this cemetery before you turn away a family applying for the burial? So maybe how many more plots do you have, if nothing at all? I mean, what are we looking at?
The time frame is fluid because we don't know how many are going to die and how many are going to ask to use Tiguac Cemetery as the final resting place. But as far as plots is concerned, John can tell you how many are left.
So we have about approximately 8 more plots left.
That could take 8 months. It could take what?
Yeah.
It just depends on how many people choose
varies on
Tiguac to be the burial plot.
Okay. How much do you estimate it costs to operate the Tiguac Cemetery, and how much has been allocated in your budget to cover these costs?
We've been asking for an allocation for Tiguac, at least employee-wise. Senator, we don't even have a lowering device for the caskets. We have to work with the funeral homes to do that. We don't have the what do you call it, collateral equipment that are needed to truly run a cemetery and do the burials. We've put it into our budgets, and you know, it's a lump sum budget, so it gets lost in there. But in reality, we've been asking to have at least 2 personnel employed so that they can, on a daily basis, maintain the cemetery, even if there's no burial there. But we haven't had that. And in the past 4 years, you're probably aware the DPR's budget has remained status quo.
Thank you. During the site visit, your department invited my office to you explain the necessary partnership you have with our local veterans office that is key to maintaining the Tiguac Cemetery. Can you share with this committee why this partnership is critical and how sharing of the equipment and personnel affects the operations of both the Tiguac and veteran cemeteries? And then I have one more.
As I mentioned earlier, we don't have the equipment to do the burials. So we work with Mr. Agustin at the Veterans Affairs Office to loan us their backhoes. And we actually have to sometimes schedule burials based on their operational needs and when we can have free use of the backhoe. But that's one of the items that we actually put into our budget as a needed equipment. And that's the reason why we collaborate together, is we assist each other. When his people are short for burials at the Veteran Cemetery, we assist also there. So it's a partnership that has been going on for, you know, over a year.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, there will be funding needed to make actual use of this property and that we are looking to give DPR. Do you have any estimates for this cost, like installing the walking and parkways? And do you have a timeline for how soon these funds will be needed? And are they included in your fiscal year 26 budget request? I had to ask, Angel.
They are not included in our FY26 ask, because like I said, we have not put out and laid out a plan to put in sidewalks or a paved road or even the crypts that we envision happening there. But once we do get this property and it's authorized over to DPR, then we'll have things put in motion to come up with a financial plan so that it's realistic. We don't want to put anything there now and then we don't get anywhere.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, I appreciate that answer, but I want to go a little bit further. And as we look at the history of what was given by Mr. Taidagui, Mr. Borja, you said earlier that at one point or another that there were possible plans for Tiguac to expand on, or was that just?
Actually, I would say cemeteries in general. There was a public law authorizing the governor to select a lot in the northern part of Guam for a public cemetery in the northern part of Guam. But the master plan for the northern part, the northern master plan, if you would call it that, does not support burial in the grounds. So if a cemetery was to be open in the northern part of Guam, because it is over the aquifer, I think it'll probably be the condo types that DPR is existing. But in terms of a master plan, you know, for cemeteries, I believe there's something like 19 cemeteries on Guam, including private cemeteries. And I do know that DPR is looking at the other cemeteries, the private ones, and like that also. But those are really looking for historic designation of those cemeteries rather than put them into the pot as available, you know, burial slots or like that. But I'm not aware of a specific plan for Tiguac Cemetery.
Mr. Chair, that's all my questions right now, and I want to thank you and my other co-sponsors for their support of Bill 49, and I hope that we can act in time to prevent turning away any grieving family who can only afford to bury their loved ones at Tiguac. And as noted earlier, there has been changeovers, Mr. Chair, on who used to run the cemetery and why the changes there's there. Like DPR had veterans before, and then we moved it over within the last 20 years. And I know that this was brought up many years ago because of the concern for those who couldn't afford to go through the private cemeteries. And again, an obligation that you're very much aware of in all the decades of having to bury our loved ones. And until we can look at further planning and what has bring up the history that has happened in the past and what is out there, I will continue to look, because I will see if Department of Public Works has any old plans that could still be taken off the shelf and revisit it, right? We leave no stone unturned. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for at least the opportunity to hear this, and I understand the additional resources are going to be needed, and I guess you wanted to add on to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, there is a plan. I've seen it myself a few times. I will reach out to the individual that has a copy of that, and he retains all rights to it. While he was working at DLM, that was one of the projects he was assigned to do plans for there, and also the Dedido Sports Complex, as the director mentioned. The current footprint up there is about 25 acres, but the actual size of the plans includes over 100 acres up there that show development of baseball fields, football fields, soccer fields, tennis courts, and such past the pipeline there. And like the director said, these are plans, but if they can be implemented and we can get the funding source for it in terms of grants or from the legislature, that would be beneficial. So there is plans there to add about 30, 40 more years to Tiguac, and I will definitely work hard to get that for you in hopes that it's provided to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator Barnes, for your...
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment to
Sure,
a statement that
please.
Mr. Taitugui made that that employee owns those plans because he worked on it while he was at land management? I kind of beg to differ on that. Just for the record. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Borja. I appreciate that additional information. Senator Taitugui, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues, and of course, good morning to those who are here testifying today. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us. And of course, to the people of Guam who's watching, good morning. You know, yeah, that was the first question I was going to bring up, Mr. Borja. Who owns that plan? Where did you see it? Who did, you know, since you've already opened the floodgate, you know, who owns that plan, you said, that created this for Tigua Cemetery?
So since my appointment at DPR, that's one of the first tasks that I was working on. Mr. Tidegui brought that to my attention and the director at the time to see what we can do and work on Tigua Cemetery because we were getting close to the closure time. So we've been very creative over the last 3 years in moving things around and adjusting areas and creating spaces to continue on. Otherwise, it would have been closed 2
No,
years
I'm talking
ago.
about the plan you mentioned.
But so we have an engineer that is at DPR, and he had mentioned that an individual has a plan, a master plan for Tigua. This individual is Joseph Santos, and he came in there and met with me. He had the prints, and it was really a beautiful setup. I mean, it's like the mayor said, it would bring respect and
he works for DPR.
well, no, the engineer does, but Joe Santos is independent now, I believe. But he showed me the plans, and he has everything on his flash drive. And I asked to retain a copy of that, and he didn't want to give me a copy of that. But I think I can reach out to him and.
Who's the employee?
I'm not sure.
No, you said you had it. There was an employee that was with Joe Santos and.
No, the employee works for us.
Right.
Ariel. He's in. What's his last name?
And he worked with Joe Santos, huh?
Everola.
Everola, and he worked with Joe Santos on creating a master plan?
No, he's very close to Joe Santos. He was formerly at DPW and then transferred over to DPR many years back. And so he had presented to me that there is a plan, a master plan that existed. So I've known Joe since childhood, and so we met.
He showed you to, and Joe is not an employee of the government of Guam?
I don't believe so.
And he did this on his own?
Yes.
Okay, that's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we know that it's not a government employee
I will
that created
confirm
these plans.
there is a plan.
Okay,
And,
so I just wanted to
everything.
make it straight, that it's somebody who created a plan on his own, who's a private citizen.
At the time he created this plan, he was an employee of Gov Guam.
Okay, and he worked for DP.
That's what my understanding was.
Where did he work at?
My understanding was with Department of Land Management. That's what he had claimed.
Okay, that sounds like another conversation, Mr. Chair, that we need to look at and find out who this individual is and where this so-called plan, because if he created during the time he was working, that plan, like Mr. Borja said, belongs to the government of Guam. It doesn't belong to him personally.
He has quite a few master plans of a lot of different areas as well.
Yeah. And if he was creating that while he was working, it belongs to the government of Guam. It doesn't belong to him. And I hope that, Mr. Chair, we look forward to seeing this so-called plan.
Definitely. If there's any plans that are part of the, especially if he was an employee of the government of Guam, we'll try and locate those plans and get more information on it. Thank you, Senator Tidegui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, regarding the comment that you made, Mr. Saban, why is it that we can't improve before? Okay, you're talking about funding. You have to have this property into the hands of Department of Parks and Rec in order for you to make improvements. Well, you've been trying to make improvements now, and the land hasn't been in your name, so why all of a sudden you need it in your name now to make just improvements? Now, I'm not talking about expanding. I'm talking about just improvements.
Improvements in our current footprint, not in the...
Right, exactly. That's what I'm asking you. Why do you need the land in your name, Parks and Rec, in order for you to clean up the cemetery and make improvements to it in a sense of not adding more lots, just cleaning it up?
As I mentioned earlier, Senator, this condition at Tigua has been there for years. And when I came on board and I saw those homes that were being built that have been built on top of plots,
Actually, Angel, if you don't mind, just answer the question. I already know your story about it. Just answer the question.
There's no funding, Senator.
Okay, so you can do this without the land being transferred to Parks and Rec. You can make improvements, clean it up, provide sidewalks, maybe make it as nice as other cemeteries, without the land being transferred to you, correct?
Oh, we can, but we can't do any more burials.
Okay, exactly. You have 8, if I'm not mistaken, for Mr. Tidegui, 8 left, right, slots. But in the meantime, to fix it up, and to bring dignity to that cemetery, you just need funding to do this, correct?
Funding and personnel.
Okay,
Senator.
two things. What other public cemeteries are there on Guam? Which other public cemeteries?
Does DPR run?
Sorry?
DPR runs only Tiguac.
Only Tigua, right?
Yes. There are other public cemeteries, but they're under the jurisdiction probably of mayor's office like Malesso, and the
How about
others are...
Tokcha? Tokcha Cemetery?
That's Catholic cemetery.
Okay.
Same
And-
thing with Agат. It's Catholic
So in
cemetery.
Lujan and Malesu, how about those cemeteries in Lujan and Malesu?
That's correct.
Who owns those?
Go ahead, John.
For, if I may,
It belongs to the Archdiocese, Senator.
All of them do. So the only public cemetery we have is Tigua.
That's correct.
Okay. So my next question is, you mentioned equipment. So besides, money to fix it, you need the equipment and public. Have you reached out to DPW to assist you with the equipment that's needed for the cemetery at all? Have they come to your rescue at all?
Almost every time, Senator.
Okay, so they have been in partnership with you.
Yes.
Because once upon a time it was at DPW, and they did have the equipment to assist you. So I think if there's any kind of legislation we put together, it's when that, to have DPW and Parks and Rec come together in order to handle this,
Yes.
this cemetery. That would be very helpful. Have they ever turned you guys down when you needed anything?
Not turn us down, but we probably have to reschedule because of other things that are already on their schedule.
Okay.
But they've never denied us assistance.
Now this, so we don't have a plan to expand right now. There's no plan, right?
I have not seen a plan.
Okay,
There may be
so-
one existing, but I have not seen a
Okay,
plan.
so there is no plan under your, grasp right now, so we don't have a plan. But we're putting this land into Parks and Rec because,
We need the additional space for additional
no,
burials.
I'm asking why the bill just puts this land into your name. Why?
Senator, we can't bury others in property we don't own.
Okay, so that's why you want it. But the government of Guam still owns the property, correct? I mean, you've been burying
It belongs
people
to government
on
of Guam,
this
yes.
property that belongs to the government of Guam without it being in Parks and Rec.
I can't say that that's correct, but maybe Mr. Borja can respond to that.
Okay, Mr. Borja? Okay, since Angel Kenneth,
Which property?
who owns the property over Tigua?
The lot 258?
Yes.
The government of Guam.
Okay,
The property, though, however, if you note the map, that is a land registration map. So the court, before you would do land registration, the court always require a map to show your exact boundaries and like that. And that's what land management did. We surveyed the property to determine the exact boundaries of that map.
and can the government of Guam still maintain the property in their jurisdiction and allow Parks and Rec to expand for the cemetery?
By the sovereign power, yes. Yes.
Okay, they can, right?
Where they
Okay.
would run into a problem with, similar to the Gumataotao Cemetery, is that when federal funds may become available in terms of a disaster, that property, the feds take a special look into the ownership of that property before applying or before approving funds for that property. And that we found, especially in Gumataotao, that nobody knew who the owner was of the property. Everybody assumed it was the Catholic Church, but they couldn't, show the papers on that one. And for years, after several storms on that cemetery was constantly eroding.
So who owns Gumataotao?
Gumataotao,
Yeah, the cemetery there. Who owns that?
it's the government. We just finished the surveying of that on sovereign power. But can the government show the title to it? No.
So the government now owns Humatic Cemetery, correct? Is that what you said? I'm sorry, the echo in here is so bad. If you can just speak directly.
Yes, by the sovereign power.
Okay, but that doesn't stop the government of Guam in reaching out for federal funds in order to make any improvements, does it?
For Humatic, yes.
It does because it's owned by the government of Guam?
No, because it's unregistered at this point.
It's unregistered,
Right.
okay. Is Tigua registered?
Lot 258 is unregistered.
It's registered, sir?
Unregistered.
Unregistered, so how do we get it registered?
We take it to land registration.
Okay, it's as simple as that. I think...
Well, not as simple as that.
Okay.
You know, the legislature's approved several bills that require the transaction to transpire by taking it to land registration. That's the best way, really, to assert your title.
Do you recommend we do that with this property so that it is
definitely.
registered?
Definitely.
Okay, how about this extended property that's presumed to be an area to increase
I'm sorry, the lot 258?
Yeah.
Yes, that definitely should take to land registration. The expansion area.
Okay,
Yeah.
and why hasn't it ever been done?
I can't answer that on previous, the effort to do this, I believe, began back in 2003 to land register this. So land registration takes a while, and I believe at that time there were about 100 lots that the government was looking to land register. But the maps for those particular lots have since now become stale. They would have to be resurveyed again.
Well, if that's an opportunity for us to get some federal funding, because Guam right now is pretty much trapped. And if we're sitting here thinking that by transferring this property over to Parks and Rec so they can avail themselves of any kind of federal funding, well, you can talk to a bunch of agencies right now who are losing federal funding. I think we need to first register these properties, like you said, Mr. Borja, and get that on the map, before we move anything else. And then the only thing I can think of is that we just need to help fund the cemetery to provide the necessary funding to fix up and bring dignity, like President Mayor Alec said. I think that's the first thing we need to do before we start expanding anything. Where are they going to go? I'm not sure. I don't know. This has been lingering for so long. And it gets to a point that we're really going to have to look at building up, when it comes to providing crypts that way. I mean, the veterans, they've gone that direction too, because there's not a lot of land on this island. We're a very small island. So we have to think outside the box and find innovative ways to bury our family, whether it be through cremation or whether it be in the ground. The area should be kept with respect and dignity for those we bury, especially when we go to visit our loved ones during All Souls Day.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your time. Thank you, ma'am. Senator Barnett, you're recognized, sir.
Buenas noches, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the people of Guam watching at home, and thank you to the panel for providing your testimony this morning. I was actually just at Tigua yesterday. So my mom called me on Mother's Day and asked me to go put flowers around at my grandma's grave. She's down at a veteran cemetery in PITI, along with my Auntie Laling, and then my Auntie Jeannie, my mom's youngest sister, is over at Tigua with my mom's brother, Uncle Bill. And so I just first want to say there was a big difference in the condition at Veterans Cemetery. I saw Director San Agustin down there versus what I saw at Tigua. And I know that the conditions at this cemetery have also made the headlines recently, so I understand where Mayor Alec is coming from in saying that, basically, Lana, you guys want this extra property, but, you're not even maintaining the one that you have already. But I'm also cognizant of what Mr. Taidagui said, is that you only have 8 more burials available. So can I just ask how frequently you get requests for burials there? Because I know there's a bunch of other options.
So it varies on the days and the months. Sometimes we have 20 burials within the week, and then it slows down. Then it starts picking up again.
And then, so as you come in Tigua on the left side, where there's some clearing going on there, what's happening at that area?
So that's the Bill 49-38, lot 258, that we did clear that property just to see and have an imagination of how much space we're looking at.
So I'm just a little confused because you're telling us that you can't bury on the property, and I'm just kind of getting the perception that you guys don't even want to touch this property, but you've already cleared it?
We've cleared it so we can take a look at the space-wise and have a plan of how we're gonna, what avenue we're gonna go to.
Okay, yeah. And I'm also just a little confused because I understand the urgency and that you've, brought this matter to the attention of whichever previous legislatures. But I just think for the senators that would, if you've had a couple years and you've been making this ask, we would just love it if you came here with the little map, like Masaya sketch that said, hey, we're going to put this over here. Because what I notice at Tigua is it's very unorganized, and I'm not sure if that's the intent, where my mother's brother and sister are buried. We're very lucky because they're right on the roadside. But, to go into some of the graves, you have to step on, unfortunately, some of our deceased loved ones' toes, right? And so that's where I think this whole talk about the plan comes into place, is because I already have it in my mind, if you've only got 8 burials left and we pass this bill, someone's going to need to be buried, and you're going to go bury them, and then you're going to have to bury everyone else. And if you start crooked, then you end crooked. You know what I mean? So that's for me, that's why we need a plan, because in so many areas of our government, yes, it's been going on and on and on, and Tigua's been, not maintained since before all our time, but that doesn't mean that we have to just keep letting it. This is the same situation with the schools, right? And so I have to quote, Mr. Sablan, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this quote, Taza plan, leche flan, right? We need to have a good plan so that we don't end up repeating the history just up there, that specific property, right, Tigua. And I know we've had issues with the residents doing what they do, planting the trees, and then I know I've also covered some stories with the little houses. So I think that's where I'm kind of confused, is that we would like to see, at least I would like to see some kind of, not necessarily a detailed architectural design, but, at least a hint at what you guys want to do with the property, so that we don't, end up filling this property and then coming back, how many years later asking for more.
Senator, I just wanted to say that you see the difference between the veterans and Tigua simply because the Veterans Cemetery has a dedicated staff to operate that cemetery. We don't. The only time our personnel go up there actually is to unlock the gate when some loved ones want to go in and visit their loved ones, or if GPA needs to come in and work on their power lines. Unfortunately, Senator, many times, even when the gate is locked, the other people that don't want to keep, like our other parks, clean, they come in there with their trucks of trash and dump it there. And we've been trying to put a stop to that. We've been trying to catch them on the spot. We've even opened up bags of trash to see who it belongs to. But see, that's what I mean. If we don't have a dedicated staff with a gate that's locked and people can come in on open hours or whatever, it's going to continue to be like that unless we put in the effort to fund it and put staff in there that can stay there on a daily basis.
Is the area patrolled by the Territorial Park Patrol?
Whenever they can, yes, they make rounds there.
Okay. But they're not, and I understand the limitations with overtime, but they don't patrol the area at night?
But people will come in the dark of the night to come in and do their stuff.
Okay.
Senator, may I say something also too, just so you're aware, the panel's aware, is that it is Department of Parks and Recreation staff and the operator of the backhoe that not only does the burials at Tigua, we also do the burials for the veterans. So we serve dual purpose, and when they're down there, there's nobody at the cemetery to attend to it. The other thing is we have brought this plan up many times in the past to our past oversight. So pleading for help. And now that's why where we're at today. So I just wanted to make sure that we have an understanding on that. We don't have a lift to lift the casket down. We have to borrow from the Veterans Cemetery, you know, and they also have federal funding. They have veterans funding. They have different sources that we are not privy to. So there is a lot of challenges there.
So did you put into your budget the cost of what it would take to hire the necessary maintenance staff and to get the equipment that you're telling us you need? It's going to be a little tough because my Republican colleagues, they're talking about cut, scissors, snip, this and that. But, you know, at the end of the day, we have obligations and responsibilities
so
to the people of Guam.
in the 37th legislature, there was a senator that proposed a bill for $5 million. And in that bill, with my experience in past private sector, I've met with every division head in our department to see what their wants and needs are, the equipment that's needed in order for us to function properly. You know, we attend to a lot of children throughout the island with our parks and sports facilities. And if we can revisit that bill, that would address everything we will need for the next 4 or 5 years. We may not even need an increase in our budget if that bill is considered. And I think I brought that up to you at the Easter event. And if that can be revisited, that will help DPR to the next level for the next 4 or 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Terlahi, you're recognized, ma'am.
So just want to say, Mr. Chair, thank you all for your testimony today. I see the Chapeau's here. Were you intending to provide testimony on this property? Supporting. Is there any historic property in this location? Has it been surveyed?
Mr. Borja, I think Senator Terlahi was asking about
surveyed for land purposes, yes, but archaeological survey, that's not under our lane. But if you're asking, has the property been surveyed? Yes, we do have a approved survey.
So you said you surveyed it for land registration, but the land registration is not complete?
Oh, yeah, the survey was just completed in January of 2024, the survey.
So when will the land registration be completed? Why were you surveying it and for
land registration purposes.
And why was this a priority to be registered?
Because of the capacity of the other lot, the adjoining lot. See, the cemetery right now is on lot 273. And my understanding is that they've reached close to capacity on that lot. So DPR, several years ago, came to land management and said, is there any property, not necessarily there, that's available for a public cemetery? And we referred to the previous public law that authorizes the governor to select a lot up north. However, for the planning purposes of the northern area, they did not recommend burial in ground as a public cemetery in the north. So we looked around the areas adjacent to lot 273, the existing cemetery now. We looked around the area and we found this property, which is actually between the cemetery and Route 6. It's kind of like in the front portion of that. The back portion of lot 273, I don't think it's been totally used for burials, but I believe it's a deep depression. It's kind of like a deep hole in the back. Maybe that's where Angel was saying that. So it's not really available, at least at this time, for burial. On the back part of the existing cemetery, which is lot 273.
Is that correct, Mr. Sablan, Director?
That's correct.
So how big is your property? Your current, how big is, or Mr. Borja, how big is lot 273? Because the property this bill wants to transfer is 45,793 square meters. How big is lot 273, the original cemetery lot?
You know, I don't have that information, Senator. The map that I have is actually a map for lot 258. It only shows the lot 273 adjoining. But if the property is, if 258 is 45,000 square meters, I'd say that the lot 273 is basically maybe double the size of that. 90,000, but again, that's just an eyeball estimate.
Yeah, does anyone know? Does anyone have the facts?
Of lot 273, the area for lot 273.
What was the question?
It's 38, Senator, it's 30 acres,
30 acres.
but a big portion of it is not usable.
Yeah, what portion?
Only the top portion.
No, what portion is not usable?
You go further
How
down
big is that?
inside.
15 acres of the 30 acres, are you
It's
saying?
roughly about half of the actual size, Senator. Yeah.
And it's not usable because it's a ravine, you're saying. Is it
it's-
usable for any other purpose? Mr. Borja, do you know? And on your land planning, have you ever seen those ravines used for any other purpose?
You know, I can't really say, Senator. I do know that it's a big hole, and it's, other than that, I can't say what it would be used for.
And allow for that, the topography of the half part, the rear end of the property is two creeks that go down, and because of that, the topography is very steep. So we've only allowed to use about half of that 273, and that's why we've been working with DLM to see if we can include lot 256 into the.
All right. So it sounds like this property's been surveyed by land management since 2024, meaning they were in on the plan to expand this cemetery using lot 258. They've prioritized surveying it. The problem is, it's us here who are charged with transferring the land, have no plans in front of us. We have no inkling. You guys make it sound like you've seen a plan once, but you don't have anything in front of you. There's nothing concrete. And it's very frustrating. Like, it seems such a reverse process that give us this land, we want to expand, as opposed to we've been working on this for years to expand on this particular property, and this is how we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to make sure, is this property 258, Mr. Borja, suitable for these purposes, or are we going to find unusable portions of the land as well?
Any property in that area may have unusable portions, yes.
Why is that?
It's just the topography, especially in this area. If you look at the front between the actual cemetery and Route 6, yes.
So, Senator,
Right? It goes at the hill as well, right? The front?
Yes.
It's Nimitz Hill.
May I ask a question? May I say that when we first started working on this, or I did back 3 years ago, when I approached DLM and I showed them the maps that we had at DPR, they were not aware of this lot 257, or it was never registered. And there was a question of, you know, what is this lot? And so it wasn't registered, and it didn't have any file on it. And so that's the whole purpose now, try to get it into. We had thought it was part of it originally, so.
All right, so Mr. Borja, in the master plan that DLM staff has drawn up for, I guess, the expansion of the cemetery, what lots were involved in that master plan?
I'm not aware of the master plan.
I'm sure they must have told you. The director knows, and the deputy director knows of a master plan by Mr. Santos, and you're saying you have no idea? No one's checked into whether DLM has those maps?
Just for correction, Senator, I do not know of that plan. I'm not aware of that plan.
I have seen the plan, and I've talked to Joseph
Yes.
Santos about it.
I bet it did not include lot 258.
I will reach him. I've also texted him, actually, while we're talking to see if he can
Mr.
meet.
Borja, is there any plan that you're aware of that includes expansion of this cemetery, and what lots were used for that plan?
No, I'm not aware of any plan.
So you just came up with 258 yourself? Or
No.
You
Senator,
did, Mr. Pelletier?
When we approached DLM, they questioned this lot, 258. And we said, well, we don't know. It just, this is the map we have. And so then we started the process of trying to include that into.
So you looked at the other
overlay.
adjacent lots?
Pardon me?
Are there adjacent lots? Did you look at those?
I believe so, on the back side of 273, and then on the right side of 273 as well.
So and you decided 258, you, Mr. Pelletier, decided 258 is the
Well,
best one?
you can't, there's no access to the one behind 273. 258 is the one that's adjacent to 273, and on the right side, it's been subdivided for housing, so that we can't touch any of that. We can't get to one. One is
Subdivided by the government? What do you mean?
I have no
Is it
idea.
government land, Mr.
No,
Borja?
no. If you look at the land registration map, upper right hand of the map there, that's the Nimitz Estate subdivision.
Right.
And if you look to the left of that map, you see lot 234, which belongs to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And then above lot 234, you find lot 259, which belongs to the National Park Service.
So this is the only lot adjacent to the current cemetery that is
Yes.
usable?
That
Mr.
belongs to
Borja?
government of Guam.
It belongs to the
or
government of
Yes.
Guam. Okay.
Yes, Senator.
That's what I want to know. So this should be the lot, hopefully, that's involved in the master plan, but nobody knows?
Nobody knows.
You know, Mr. Borja,
don't
it's
know.
very, like, unbelievable that they would be mentioning a master plan done by DLM and that we can't get access to that before this hearing.
Senator, let me question, correct the things. I don't know if it was prepared by DLM. I just know that he was employed with DLM at that time. I've seen the plans, I've seen the master plans, and if I'm not mistaken, 258 is included in that master plan. But I may be wrong.
All
I'm
right.
just saying that I've seen the plan and I've seen everything. I've asked for plans and so that I would have it and present it to.
Did you ask
to
DLM
Then, yeah, we
to
met.
look for any plans that exist?
Well, that's when we started questioning
And
about
so-
these lots.
So there are
and-
no plans, Mr. Borja, that exist according to your knowledge in the Department of Land Management?
I won't say
No.
that no plans exist. According to my knowledge, I've never seen those plans, if there are
But
plans.
did we look for them? If they
Yes,
were done in previous
Definitely.
years?
I actually started looking for them while I was employed at the legislature in 2018. That's why I can say that there are at least 19 private cemeteries, because even back then we were looking at options for TIGWAC.
Okay, so we definitely want the land to be registered. And when did you say that would be completed? You said you're working on that?
Senator, you know, we can't control the court's calendar.
But is it being worked on?
Yes,
is
it
it
is
filed?
being worked on. But land registration is a very, very
Is it
slow
filed?
process. Yeah. I'm
Is
sorry?
it filed at the court?
No, not yet.
When will it be filed?
As soon as we transmit it to the Attorney General's office, it's the Attorney General actually that takes care of
Okay,
land
but the
registration.
survey was completed since 2024.
Correct.
So it seems like you're holding it from the Attorney General. When will you be submitting it to the Attorney General?
Even before that, we've had other lots registered, in particular lot 286, which is down the street and next to the Veteran Cemetery, because at that time also, so we were giving kind of priority to these
Yeah,
burial sites.
So that's my question. When is your priority to submit this one? Yeah. Is this what's the priority looking like for the land registrations?
We could probably submit it to the Attorney General's office next week.
Are there others before this in your priority list?
There's others before the Attorney General's office for land registration, yes. Mostly Chamorro Land Trust properties. As you're probably aware, Chamorro Land Trust gave
Yeah.
out some leases on other.
Yes, I know they have land registration.
So
but
they also have a priority.
yes, what about
list.
you? I'm asking about you. Land management.
Is it the priority?
Are there others in the list of priorities?
Yes, the mostly Chamorro Land Trust lots, yes.
Okay, so no other, all right.
For cemetery, no.
And then, so the bill says we have to transfer the property to the Department of Parks and Rec. Is that necessary if it's already Gov Guam owned and Gov Guam controlled? Gov Guam can do?
Necessary, you know, the federal government has kind of changed their perception on grants to specific projects because of an experience they had where the, I believe it was a federal highway, gave some money for a mass transit building, then the legislature transferred that mass transit building to the mayor of AGAT. So I believe the federal government now is recommending or insisting that if they are going to put federal funds into a facility, that it should be owned by the
person applying for the grant.
right. For example,
So
the
can Gov Guam-
EPA headquarters that the
Yes.
federal EPA wants to fund and like that, but they're saying, you know, you got to own it so that we can.
Yeah, that's
Same
because-
with mass transit.
That's because the Guam EPA is applying for the grant. But in this case, when we're talking about typhoon destruction and you need to apply for federal funds for the repair of government of Guam property, wouldn't it include all of the government of Guam? I mean, we could include our cemetery if it's registered as part of, like you said, Humatak now registered because of that purpose, right? Same. So we do, Mr. Sablan thinks we only own one cemetery, so who's maintaining Humatak Cemetery?
Humatak Mayor's office,
But it's GovGuam owned.
but he's maintaining it.
That means it's under the jurisdiction of DPR?
No.
Just the government of Guam, like in the cloud? What's that mean? It's got to be. Right, Mr. Borja?
Sovereign power.
Pardon?
Sovereign power.
What do you mean?
If there's a Montes in Dueñas, if there's no registered landowner, it belongs to the government. But the government's also required to take it to land registration.
And you did?
On which one? On Humatak?
Yes.
No,
You said you did. You never did?
never did. Humatak still. We just finished the survey on Humatak.
Okay.
But the problem with it being unqualified for federal funds following a disaster goes all the way back to Typhoon Parkinson.
Because it wasn't registered, you said.
It wasn't registered.
Yeah, so we're going to take care of that problem by registering it. Whether it has to be transferred or not is not clear at all. It really just designating who is in charge of it, just like the rest of our government of Guam lands, designated for park uses or recreational uses, but ownership, is there any problem with it belonging to the government of Guam in general?
Only for federal funds,
But you said the only problem with federal funds was land registration.
it was land registration for that. But for example, I don't know, the Baptist Church down in Lujan, you know, it remains in GovGuam. You have to authorize an MOU for historic preservation. But that's another issue. I don't want to cloud the issue like that. But ownership of the property, you know, sometimes jurisdiction is okay. It depends on the federal agencies. But more and more, federal agencies don't want to commit any funds to a facility unless it stays for that purpose.
Yes.
Which is, you know, addressed a little bit in this bill.
All right, so Director, has Parks and Rec ever applied for any federal funds for the cemetery?
Not for the cemetery.
Are you planning to apply? Do you have any grants on your radar that you've spotted and are going to apply for the expansion of the cemetery?
We have personnel that's looking into that, Senator, into different grants.
All right.
Not just the cemetery.
All right. And what are your plans for the existing violations on the current cemetery? So the Director of Land Management said there are burials on top of the easements. We saw in the news all the other issues. What are your plans for those violations and for maintenance? And you said no funding, we don't have personnel, but we give you a lump sum budget. So that just means that it wasn't budgeted or not a priority included by BBMR when giving you your cap, or by the governor and giving you your cap, and you're saying you didn't include it for FY26 either, the maintenance of this park. So you're including it in your lump sum budget. That's up to you. So what are your plans for the existing violations? Are those going to be resolved or not?
As far as people building on top of, we make them, it's not happening anymore, Senator, because we make sure that when they sign to be buried at TIGUAC, that they are very, very clear as to what can or can't be done in TIGUAC. As far as conditions that have happened, violations that have happened way before our time here, there's really nothing that we can do with that.
Thank you, Senator.
The violations that the Department of Land Management brought up is decades ago, you have GPA main power lines running through there, and below the lines, there's an 80-foot easement that is nobody to be buried under that, so that they would have free reign and repairs or what's needed. What happened decades ago and the burials that happened then, that's the violation that we can be held responsible for in the future. So those individuals have been buried there. We don't know, or we don't have a plan right now of how to contact the families, because if we're going to have to mitigate that, that's going to be one of the key things. Contact every family to relocate those burial sites to a new area And if we are forced to do that, then we would do that, and we would need this additional land here in order to rebury them there. That's a huge undertaking because the violation was done decades ago.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator. I'll give you latitude on your one more question.
Just Masi. They're limiting me to one more question, but who is the legal owner of lot 273, the existing cemetery? Is it the government of Guam or the Department of Parks and Recreation or someone else?
You know, Senator, I'll have to look at the documents on there. There's 2 documents cited on there. Unfortunately, it's for my eyes, they're a little bit too small to see what the ownership document or the jurisdiction document is that they have for that one. I don't have that information right now. If you look at the map, lot 273, right below it, there's 3 lines. 2 of them are document numbers.
Could you please provide to us in writing, Mr. Borja, Director, your assessment of the adjacent lots, why you say the ones in the back are not usable? Just put that in writing, or you say you can't access the other lot that's in the back there.
The other portion of lot 273.
That 273, and then you said there's another adjacent property behind 273 that you just can't access right now, and I just want that to come from land management if there is no possible way to access that.
Okay, if we can refer to the map, Senator, would that be the area above lot 259, above that easement? Is that the area that you're looking at?
I don't know, that was a statement made by Parks and Rec. That's why I'm asking you to verify it.
Yes, we can provide a aerial overlay of the topo lines of the property.
An assessment whether the other adjacent properties are also usable or not usable for these cemetery purposes, and whether this lot that we're looking at is going to be usable for cemetery purposes as well.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, before I give Senator Barnes to close on our statement, I just have a couple of Muña Barnes, a couple of perhaps maybe questions or statements that, you know, I understand the plight of Department of Parks and Recreation. You know, Mr. Tidegway, John Glenn, you have been really instrumental in ensuring that the burials up at Tigua Cemetery happen in a timely manner, and most especially with what you guys and what equipment and funding you guys have to effectuate these burials. I too have a brother that's buried up there, but you know, we take care of what we can with his plot. And unfortunately, is the cemetery the way it is? Absolutely. But I think what we need to look at now is how can we prevent this from continuing? And I'm not sure whether, Director, you would know, does the cemetery have its own revolving fund?
Not just for the cemetery, no.
And I think that's what we need to look at, is to ensure that the fund that goes in for the burials is strictly for the cemetery for maintenance or improvements or equipment. So maybe a cemetery revolving fund. And when was the last time you folks have actually reevaluated the cost for burials up at Tigua? Because I remember it used to be $250, and I believe it's $500 now.
Okay, Vice Speaker, I believe back in 2006, 2007, that's the last fee structure that was, and it was up to $500.
Yes, and I think, again, those fees have to be reevaluated. Just the cost of a backhoe, to rent the backhoe to come up, dig so that we can bury their loved ones, and then to cover the ground again, it costs more than $500, doesn't it?
Yes, Mr. Vice Speaker, and we are evaluating our current fee schedule. That includes the cemetery as well.
Yeah, definitely, because I know Department of Parks and Recreation, like Department of Public Works, cannot be there all the time, and when they're not available, you would have to rent the backhoe to effectuate the burials, correct? Yeah, and I remember back in 2020, COVID-19, the pandemic disaster plan, when we all gathered together to find out how much burial spots we had available up at Tigua Cemetery, it was a concern then that probably should have been addressed 5 years ago. But here we are today addressing the burials once again. So, you know, where we were and where we're at today, and Mr. Tidegwee, 8 burials left, I think that's a very grave concern because of the fact that there are many folks on our island that don't have the ability to go to a private cemetery. And how much longer are we going to be to where you guys are going to come back to this legislature, or the governor's going to have to declare an emergency to say we need to open more space for burials? We saw that emergency 5 years ago. How many burials have you effectuated from COVID-19 to today, do you recall? Mr. Tadiwe, do you recall how many, about approximate? From the time the pandemic started to just these past 5 years?
Approximately about maybe over 2,000 some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really need to take heed to the call of Department of Parks and Recreation about increasing the footprint for the Tiguat Cemetery. And I hope that, you know, all the information that has come here today and has been put forward, we'd be able to come out with a plan to say, hey, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. You know, I know over the years, and you guys don't have the equipment, you guys don't have the proper lowering device, you don't have the proper church truck, canopy, just a canopy. I think it's what, 8 by 8, or it's just a pop-up. And unfortunately, that's what you guys are left to work with. So funding for the cemetery is important. I think we need to continue to look at what we can do to ensure that the cemetery funding is separate, apart and separate from Parks and Recreation. You know, you guys get the short end all the time because, you know, not only do you have the parks to worry about, now you got a cemetery to worry about.
Yeah, Vice Speakers, full disclosure, DPR has no backhoe. So the special thanks to DPW and also the Veterans Cemetery for allowing us to use their backhoes. It's our operators that bury at also Tiguat and also Veterans. We do the burials at both sites utilizing their equipment. So we have nothing. We don't have the lowering device. And we have that in our plan one day to purchase the tents, the chairs, and also the lowering devices and backup devices and backhoes and provide the services that is necessary. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Tadway, I remember you were saying earlier that you guys cleared the property up there just for trying to see what space is available for utilization?
That's correct.
Yeah, was there any archaeological survey done up there, or did you need any, or it was just for?
I mean, if it's available, you know, I would agree, but we just cleared the property so we can see the maximum space that we're looking at.
Yeah, okay.
To move forward.
Director, you have any other?
No, and of course, if need be, if HPO has to come in and make a archaeological survey, I'm sure that they will do it. They're also with our department, so yeah. Okay. We can have it done.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and find out what more needs to be done with expanding the cemetery and how we can move forward with it. Okay, and hopefully you'll be able to get this issue, you know, situated so that we can. I don't want to see us to get into a situation where people can't bury their loved ones because there's no place to put them. And you know, when we say the private cemeteries, I understand, but $7,000 to $10,000 to bury a loved one in a private cemetery, not much people can afford that, you know. So us as a government, two things happen. Either the families take care of their loved ones and they bury them, or they don't claim their loved ones. And there's already situations like that going on in the hospital that they don't claim their loved ones. And then the government is end up with the responsibility of burying. So let's do what we can to ensure that, you know, people can still have that dignity and the respect to bury their loved ones, and ensure that they have that respect and, you know, that opportunity with an affordable public cemetery.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So just to clarify on the 8 plots left available, that's for the adults. The infants, we still have pretty much about maybe 50 to 100 available for infants. Yeah. It's for the adults.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, Madam Senator, would you like to close?
Si Jus Masi, Vice Speaker, Mr. Chair. And to close our conversation today, I literally want to stress the importance of the Vicente A. LIMTIACO Memorial Park as a community lifeline. It remains the most affordable option for grieving families who cannot pay for the high costs associated with private cemeteries without going into debt. Expanding this Nimitz Hill Park will mean that we are doing our part not to turn these families away in their moment of great need while they are mourning a tragic loss. So once again, this bill is simple, Mr. Chair. It expands our only government-managed cemetery so it can continue to serve these families. The property borders the current footprint, and it is already a surveyed, unassigned government lot. This bill makes sense because it serves our neediest families, because it does not require any funding for this initial step, and because our experts have shared that this is needed in order for this important community resource to continue operating. And it is true, Mr. Chair, this issue has not just been brought up this term. It has been brought up way back, if I'm not mistaken, even before the pandemic or during the pandemic. Being here that long, over 20 years, Mr. Chair, I know that this was an issue, and we can't keep kicking that can further along. We need to be able to address it. The administrators are here to saying that there is a critical need, and we have to facilitate and help this moving forward. So I thank you, Mr. Vice Speaker, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to hear this bill, number 49-38 COR. I want to thank the panel members, the agency heads, Director Borja, Director Sablan, Deputy Director Pelletier, and also Administrator Taidegui, for sharing your critical concern on this issue, being here today, and knowing why we need to look at this matter urgently. So, si Jus Masi, and I yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. This will conclude the public hearing for Bill number 49-38, and we will move on to the next bill, 7938 COR, an act to authorize the MAGA'HÅGAN GUAHAN to sell a portion of Block 8 in New Agate, designated as Block 8 Park Area, and to deposit the proceeds of the sale into the Chamorro Land Trust Infrastructure Survey Fund. And because of Mr. Saswico, who was, this bill was at the request of, is not here to testify on this legislation, what we are going to do is go ahead and reschedule public hearing for 79-38 COR. So this committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 7 days from today, which may be mailed to my office on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalang Santo Papa in Aganya. You may also send your statements to us at Vice Speaker Tony Ada at guamlegislature.gov. Thank you for your participation in this public hearing for Bill number 49-38 is adjourned. The time is now 9:29. Thank you.